basically, I'd like to start all of you off by, again, thanking you for having me. My name is Michael Hearne. I am a regional director at World Education Services. One of my main responsibilities is essentially bringing the resources of WES and all that we do in the international education realm to higher education institutions, to licensing boards, and really anybody who would be the end user of our evaluations. So, whether that be a immigration office or a government in the U.S., a government agency in the U.S. or Canada. So what I'm going to just kind of showcase first before I get into the core of the evaluation and the authentication is talk a little bit about what we do at WES. I'm hoping that it might be able to inspire you or provide you with some insight into your own international education process, and you might see something that might be beneficial, especially during these challenging times where it's safe to say that there are not a lot of resources being dedicated to the international education realm by government agencies. And so what you'll find is that a lot of this information will cover information being done in the nonprofit sector by higher education institutions and really just people passionate and interested in international education. So to give you a bit of an idea about the WES mission, WES's mission statement is basically to advance the global mobility and integration of people into academic and professional settings by evaluating and advocating for the recognition of international education qualifications and enabling individuals to fully utilize their education. That's the only slide I'm going to read word for word, but that just gives you a better idea that we're not just here to evaluate equivalencies and credentials, but also to try to provide as much insight as possible into what to do with that evaluation, what kind of resources are available. So the sphere, the complex system that WES exists in is not just universities and colleges like Montgomery, but also regulatory bodies, foundations, immigrant serving organizations, refugee serving organizations, which is more important now than ever, as well as employers and employer associations. So the WES evaluation is not only used when you are applying to college, but it is a document that is good throughout your lifetime, throughout your professional career. So many people will often come back to use it for either immigration purposes or for further education and employment. To give you an idea, before the pandemic, obviously a lot of these numbers are pre-pandemic, as are all numbers that you'll hear quoted, but in 2019, we completed about 485,000 credential evaluations between the US and Canada, up from 56,000 in 2010. This year, we still plan to complete roughly about 400,000 evaluations. These are the top countries of education. I know that it's hard to raise your hand, but just I'll imagine you all raising your hands or not to ask you, if any of you are from India, Nigeria, China, the UK, US, Philippines, Pakistan, Australia, Iran, and Bangladesh. Those are our top countries of education for last year. And so while not an inclusive list, a lot of the evaluations and documents and credentials that we receive are coming from those countries. And it should be noted that before the pandemic, one of the only positives to come out of the pandemic is that before the pandemic in March, we mostly accepted paper documents. And as of the end of this year, we are trying to get digital document submission from up to 60% of our sending institutions. So many of you might be coming into this presentation saying that, I have an issue with my documents, the school's still closed and I can't get paper copies. That's something that we can definitely discuss a little bit in further detail during the Q&A, but it is the case that we have drastically increased the number of institutions outside of the US and Canada that have been sending us documents digitally. This is just a bit of a snapshot of where our applicants come from, what their purpose of their evaluation is, country of residence, highest level of education. Those are all just statistics and information for the general profile of a WES applicant. 71% of our applicants in the US are coming for undergraduate study, 20 for graduate, and then you see the numbers are a bit different in Canada. So what I'll talk about, and then again, I'm trying to kind of speed through these parts so I can get to the evaluation. These are all of the resources that we have available, and I'd be happy to answer questions about any of them. The Credential Evaluation Report is one that you're very aware of and we're probably known for. But the West Global Talent Bridge is the part of West that helps to bridge the gap between an applicant's credentials and the opportunity they have in the US. The Skilled Immigrant Integration Program seeks to kind of use that information in local communities and try to find opportunities to provide immigrants with employment and other advancement within the education field. And Imprint Coalition does very much the same thing, providing resources for skilled immigrants. The Gateway Program, the Miriam Masefa Fund, all these other things I'll talk about briefly, but they're all immigrant integration focused and meant to serve the needs of immigrants coming into the US and Canada. So Global Talent Bridge informs and enables immigrants, builds capacity and networks, and through research and policy, especially with local and state governments over the last couple of years, they work to try to provide ways for immigrants coming into the US and Canada to have more opportunity. Same thing with that Skilled Immigrant Integration Program. It's an opportunity to leverage technical assistance from Global Talent Bridge and its national partners to provide opportunity and resource for immigrants. Those are the current program sites for our Skilled Immigrant Integration Program. So I know that you all are in Maryland, in Montgomery. The Montgomery College area is mostly in Maryland, so that's something to definitely talk about a little bit later on. I want to just kind of work through these so that we can get to the portion that where we talk about what's actually useful and relevant to you all and your own experience. There are a couple of tools that you might already be familiar with. I'll just touch upon each of them briefly. The iGPA calculator is a tool that's available on the West website that is essentially, it's like a pre-evaluation tool where you can, if we have evaluated the credential before, this links to our database and then provides you with a general GPA in US terms for the work that you've done overseas. So you have to enter in the institution, the grades themselves, as well as the courses, GPA and the credit amounts for each class. This is not meant to be seen as a replacement for a West evaluation, but it can give you a general idea of what your GPA might be converted to in US terms while you are considering getting a West evaluation and figuring out if it's something that you'd like to move forward with. Similarly, there is a series of resources on our website. They're called grade conversion guides, country resources. Going to these resources on the West website, you can find information, contact information for the Ministry of Education. You can find profiles of systems of education for those of you employed and helping students at Montgomery College. This is a great resource because it can give you kind of a fact sheet, like a fast fact sheet of information over a particular country. The degree equivalency tool is similar to the iGPA calculator in that it can provide you with the rough degree equivalency, just the credential equivalency itself for a particular credential that you've received. Let's say you completed 4 years of an undergraduate degree or some other undergraduate degree within your home country, and then you want to see what it would be equivalent to in the US. Again, it's a pre-screening tool. It is meant to provide you with some better information to help inform your decisions of pursuing education in the US or Canada, but not meant to be a replacement for an evaluation. It's just really kind of a way to have more information before moving forward. This one is also beneficial. The West Scholarship Finder, it provides information not about West scholarships themselves, but it's more of a database to provide information on full tuition scholarships, merit-based, need-blind scholarships, and other types of scholarships. Many of you might have heard that international students are not eligible for financial aid. That is not entirely accurate. So that's definitely a conversation to have more with your admissions counselors and advisors and so on. But it's generally the case that federal need-based aid is something that international students are not eligible for, but there are a wide variety of different resources that are available to international students if they know where to look. So this is one of those resources. The Scholarship Finder provides information. It's not for every single country, but if you have any questions about it, I will be happy to answer that question afterward. I'm just gonna fly past a couple of these that are not related to what you all do. They're more for the administrators working at let's say Montgomery College. But I do want to mention the WES digital badge, which is something that WES has had for about a year and a half, which is when you complete a WES evaluation, a WES ICAP evaluation, you receive what's called a digital badge, which is something where you can essentially put code into your Twitter, Facebook, or other social media profiles. And once you put that unique link into those profiles, it provides one-click verification of your international education. So long story short is that you can put this in your LinkedIn profile. Somebody looking at it can click on it, and it will verify that you have completed a WES evaluation report. It'll provide a general equivalency of the work that you've done. It won't give them your evaluation outright. They can work with you to order an evaluation for their records, but it definitely lets people know that you are serious in terms of your marketability to employers or institutions of higher education. So that is just something to mention as we get into the actual credential evaluation, which is what I'm about to talk about right now. Does somebody have a question? I heard somebody go on unmuted. Alrighty. So the reason you're all here, the workshop is meant to discuss identifying and describing your credentials, verifying that your credentials are authentic, and then understanding the GPA and understanding the evaluation and the authenticity of the documents that you submit. So the WES credential evaluation, and if you'll just excuse me, I'm going to take a quick sip of coffee. I haven't had to talk this long in a very long time, so I remember I'm dusting it off. Where essentially the credential evaluation that you are ultimately applying for, if you're applying for a WES evaluation, is a two-part process. Essentially, what you're applying for is not only to have your documents evaluated from whatever country you're coming from or whatever country the education documents are coming from. It's also to verify the authenticity of the documents so that the institution you're applying to doesn't have to ask you for additional copies of your transcripts and degrees. They know they have come from a verified source, whether that be, depending on the country, whether it be directly from the institution, through the apostille, through a Ministry of Education approved agency, and now most often through some digitally secure method, whether that be a formal method or just verifying that somebody at your institution is who they say they are, works in the registrar or records office, and has the authority to send us your documents. So those are the two parts of the evaluation that are most meaningful, not only to you as somebody who's been educated abroad, to see what your coursework and your credentials are equivalent to in the US or Canada, but also that authenticity piece. So it says that they're verified true documents. So we are trusted because we have strong policies that enable us to deliver current, accurate, and fair assessments and valid documentation. We don't just kind of receive the documents and then decide there. We have a lot of people within our 350 person organization that are meant to be trained in knowing when a document is authentic or not, whether it be because of a certain seal, certain writing, or the signature of a certain official at the institution, or confirming the actual method of receiving the document. Additionally, we have a robust database and library of information regarding the evaluation equivalencies themselves. And so we are constantly making sure that we have the most up-to-date information to not just guess on what the GPA and equivalency information would be in the US, but to be very informed by the information that's most up-to-date and recent, and to help inform our evaluations so that they make the most sense when we're providing those equivalencies. So it's based off of a lot of sound policy and research, and if we ever think that something should be updated, we are the first ones to share that information to make sure that your evaluation is authentic as possible. So that's kind of the pieces of describing your credentials. What I'll, rather than giving you specific document submission processes for specific countries right now, I will say that we have a great required documents section of our website, wes.org. If you go to required documents, you click on that tab on the top, it will take you to the specific country of education for your documents, as well as the level, whether that be secondary documents or post-secondary, or some kind of other vocational school or something like that. It asks you to specify that, and then we'll also ask you for the institution or institutions that you attended, so that we can get very specific in terms of what the document requirement methods have to be, and that you're aware of how you need to submit them before you complete a WES evaluation. So again, I know I'm providing a lot of detailed information, but the bottom line is we are trying to get your authentic documents and evaluate them in the way that makes the most sense. So it's authenticity and evaluation. On the left, you see a document by document report. It's typically required for undergraduate admission to universities' employment. That is something you'll see both in the document by document evaluation as either the evaluation itself or as the first page of a course by course analysis, which you'll see on the right side of the screen. Also includes a course by course breakdown, upper and lower level course designations, credits, GPA for each class, as well as a breakdown and the cumulative credits and GPA at the bottom. So the first page, or the only page, the report highlights the equivalency of the credential. In this example, it's a 4-year bachelor's degree. It also identifies and describes each credential, including name of credential, requirements for entry and program length, and the equivalent degree in terms of US or Canadian education. So if you are, for example, at Montgomery College and need to know if the individual graduated high school but don't have the secondary credential with the report, this information is useful because it will say admission requirements, secondary school graduation, meaning they had to graduate from high school. Finally, on this particular slide, the report also lists each course taken and a breakdown, as I mentioned, and then the report includes a GPA for upper and lower level course designation. And that is pretty much the gist of the evaluations themselves. Let me just say that in terms of understanding grade point average, and I'll just go back to that for a second, there are usually grade conversion guides. Well, not usually, there are always grade conversion guides that we are using in order to evaluate the credentials that you've submitted. So it's not done on a case-by-case basis. There is a consistency so that if you are submitting documents from a specific institution, the rules and regulations are being followed for the same institution, if somebody applies a month from now, in case there are factors that have gone into changing those rules. So there's a consistency. The database that we use makes sure of it, so that there's always going to be an equal set of standards applied to all documents coming from a specific institution. So that gives you, I know it's not a specific, this is how we evaluate your GPA, but the way that we're trying to best evaluate your GPA is to reflect in US or Canadian terms the work that you have done in another country. So for that reason, I just want to prepare you all that sometimes a 4.0 in one country might not be the same 4.0 in the US. and vice versa. Sometimes you might see something that is a satisfactory grade in your country where the documents are coming from, that then is converted to on a US 4.0 GPA scale here. So that's just something to prepare for. When you get the evaluation, you generally will find the grading scale on the back, the alphanumeric grading scale that basically shows you what a B plus is versus, you know, if that's a 3.3 or what it is on a 4.0 scale. So that information is included in the report that you receive. And then finally, understanding the authenticity of your documents. I covered that. I'm sure there are going to be a couple of questions about it, but the general idea is that in every case, we are trying to ensure that the documents we're receiving are coming to us in the most authentic way possible. So for that reason, we don't accept photocopies unless it's of an English translation, and you'll be made aware of when we require an English translation for a specific country, if it doesn't come as part of the diploma supplement, for example. So all of that information is specific to country and sometimes to institution, but if you have specific cases where you are all, you know, coming from and you have questions about those, I'd be happy to also provide that information. We do have a lot of different ways to contact us. We are the individual regional directors at WES, but the best way to get in touch with World Education Services is to go directly to our website at wes.org, and then you just click on the Help Center, and then there you will find a glossary of terms where we are able to provide you with information on what specific terms mean on the evaluation. There's also a lot of great resources there for applicants, and then you can actually call us, email us, and write to us, and we get back to you as soon as we can. So there are a bunch of different ways to reach out to us, including on social media. So that all starts by going to the wes.org website and then going to our help center. So I believe that I'm a minute short of the half hour, but I hope that you'll allow me that ending early. And what I will do now is stop talking at you and then start talking with you. So Mint, if you want to just come back, and I don't know if you want to regulate the Q&A or if there's a way you want to do it, but I'm just going to defer back to you for the moment.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. And I will allow you to sip your coffee now.
Thank you.
Since you talk a lot. I will ask some questions which are given to me by participants before this workshop, actually. And then I'll let the participants go ahead and unmute themselves, and they can ask questions. Now, to start with, you mentioned about international students, scholarship and other options that they have. Thank you for that. That is a great resource. Now, when it comes to the federal, some students who are coming from another country who are qualified to get a federal, student loan or federal student aid, they have to, evaluate their information, and in their countries they have a degree, a bachelor degree at least, which makes them not eligible for federal Pell Grant. But once they come to evaluate their documentation to WES, then WES will put that degree for like 3 years or 90 credits instead of 120 or something, and they'll get that kind of evaluation. In one way, it will help them because they can, now they will be eligible to get a federal aid because they don't have a bachelor degree, obviously. But on the other hand, there are some deduction or reduction of their credit hours and grade equivalency, basically. And also, sometimes the credit hours themselves are different from countries to countries and school to schools. In some countries, one class or one subject has 4 credit hours, when it comes to WES will evaluate that as a 2 credit hour or as a 3 credit hour or something like that. So if you can talk in general about this process, I would appreciate, because this is most of the times that they are getting, we're getting this kind of questions.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So the first part being that scholarship finder, I know it's not comprehensive of all the resources that are out there, but I think what it does is gets people thinking about the fact that there are a lot of resources out there. It's not the case that international students are completely disqualified from resources. Many institutions will provide merit-based aid for including international students. I'm glad to hear, and I haven't really heard that before, that sometimes the institutions will hold off on providing any kind of aid until the WES evaluation proves a bachelor's degree. I mean, I think that there are pros and cons to that, but I think that it's great that that can be used to help individuals seek out scholarship information. To your question about when 3 credit classes are, equated to 4 credit classes and so on, there are a number of reasons, why that would specifically be the case. However, what I would say is that the best way to think about it is that we're essentially trying to find out what the evaluation. I don't know why that mark just went across the screen. Apologies for that. We're trying to figure out what the coursework in the home country is best represented as in the U.S. So I'll use an example of the Indian 3-year bachelor's degree, and that is something that we get a lot of questions about. What I'm talking about is WES has a policy that can potentially equate a 3-year bachelor's degree from India to a 4-year degree here in the US. And many people will ask us a question of why is that the case? 3 years doesn't equal 4 years. Well, it has to do very often with the academic rigor of the 3-year degree in India, the 3-year bachelor's in India. Long story short is that it's generally thought to be the case that an Indian 3-year bachelor's is more direct and to the point when it comes to major related work. Somebody working on a business degree and a 3-year bachelor's degree in India has perhaps a less liberal arts focus. There aren't as many other secondary classes that are taken, and that's why we feel comfortable providing a 3-year degree and turning into a 4-year degree in the US. So my long explanation just generally states that sometimes we look at those 3 credits in another country's awarding of those credits and see that, in fact, it would be the same amount of time or academic difficulty that would go into a 4-credit class in the US and vice versa. We're essentially trying to level the playing field and figure out, what that work would equate to in the US. So you may get that question a lot, and we're happy to answer them on a case-by-case basis, but it's generally trying to figure out, there's a word, I'll give you all a word to Google later, transitivity of the grades. What is the best reflection in the US of the work done overseas? And so that's, I think, the best way to explain that concept of why we'll turn a 3-credit into a 4-credit class, similar to the grading as well.
Thank you. Before I continue my question, I see some of the questions in chat, and I will allow my.
Hold on. Sorry, Mente. I believe Sase, did you have your hand raised?
No. Disregard.
Okay.
Okay. My colleague Grace will continue asking the questions which are on the chat.
Okay.
And then I will continue my question later on. Go ahead, Grace.
Hello. I have a question from Badi who said, "Do we need a letter from an attorney that is helping us with processing the documents overseas?" So I think it's alluding to what official is there anything that needs to be done officially in order to get those documents to be able to be used to do the evaluation?
No, and that's a great question. Thank you for that. Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Abadi, for asking that. We often don't, attorneys are not really involved in the process unless they are working for an immigration law firm and are, the end recipient of that evaluation, as an example. For the evaluation itself, we advocate that the applicant themselves be the one to go through the WES application process, and I'll tell you that when you apply, it's about a 5 or 10 minute application process online. You create an applicant portal where we stay in contact with you through email, and that you can log in to see the updated status of your documents and so on and so forth. But we try to make it so that the applicant themselves are the one really kind of applying, obtaining the documents, or getting them from the appropriate authorities overseas, or if you're still in that country, I know it's difficult now to physically go into an office. It's much easier said than done. But basically, you are responsible for getting the documents to us. And then once we receive all the documents, all payments, the evaluation takes about 7 business days to complete and then mail out. So that's the timeline that you're working with. I see somebody saying that they've waited for over 2 years. I'm deeply apologetic about that. We can definitely talk offline. And I can see what the issue has been with that. But no, to answer the question, we do not necessarily need an attorney letter. You are the one who are responsible for getting the documents to us. And we are not able to ask for documents on your behalf because we're a third party. We can receive them and be sent them, but you have to be the one to initiate that process.
Okay, Grace, do you have a second question, please?
So I just wanted to make sure, Hussein, Michael answered your question. So I think maybe it's a question of needing to reach out to him or reach out to us so that we can connect you with Michael afterwards so that you can figure out what's happening with that. And then I saw that there was a question from Tissagoit who said, does Montgomery College accept? So you can go through WES and figure out where you stand in terms of evaluation, and then from there. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Michael or Mente can jump in, but it would be best to probably get the the course by course evaluation, so that you can see, if you don't think that you already have an associate's degree, it would be probably best to do the course by course evaluation so that you can align that up with what you might need to finish up at Montgomery College. And we also do have counselors that they are with EOC, and they work closely with WES, and that you can always meet with them first and see what might be the best option for you, because it also depends on what major you would like to take.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say that that's a good way of thinking about it, that secondary level work, anything that you've taken at the high school level, is best used by completing a WES document by document evaluation. But anything where you feel that you might be receiving post-secondary or undergraduate level credits, then a course by course evaluation is the best way to go, because then that will provide you greater information to present to, let's say, as an example, an admissions counselor at Montgomery, or whoever may be receiving the report.
In addition to that, I think is Montgomery College will accept the WES evaluation. Yes, we do. That's why we have Michael today. And also, in addition to the WES, which is World Education Service, we have, by the way, this is in New York. WES is in New York, and we have Joseph Cellini and Association from Florida, and also educational credential evaluators from Wisconsin. Now, for in most cases, a lot of colleges and universities are accepting the WES evaluation, but we accept additional two agencies also.